Hey guys, it's Parsifal. I also go by Will, and I am back with another topic video. So this one might be a little bit more edited than usual. I know I don't usually edit my videos, but it's about a topic that's relatively important to me, and that I actually have references and stuff and notes for, so I want to make sure that I actually say what I intend to say. Now, mind you, I don't usually edit my videos, so it's probably still going to be a little bit rambly, but I wanted to talk about stuff because it's Pride Month or Wrath Month, whichever you prefer, and I want to talk about a topic that's close to me that is involved with that. So, yeah, as usual, if you do not want to hear me speak about stuff and just want to see the speed paint, that's totally fine. You can just mute me and just continue watching the speed paint. The speed paint itself is related to what I'm talking about. It's my character Esme and my friend's character Iver, and I am drawing them because they are related to the topic at hand, but I will talk about the specifics at a later point in the video. So all you have to know is that it's them, and there will be pride flags in the background at the very end, but if you don't care about that, then you can just watch the speed paint and enjoy the art. Alright, so for this video, because it is Pride Month, I want to talk about a pride topic that is very specific to me, and it's very specific to my identity as a aromantic person. And if you read the title, which I'm going to assume you have, then you know that I'm going to be talking about a queer platonic relationship and what that is specifically. Now, queer platonic relationships, definition-wise, we'll start with that because I probably titled the video something along the lines of, what is a queer platonic relationship? What is a QPR? Or something like that. And as I said, it is important to myself as a aromantic person because I encounter this term a lot in aromantic communities. Because a queer platonic relationship, or a QPR, is an umbrella term, according to the Avon Wiki, that defines or indicates a relationship that defies the divide between romantic partnership and just friends. Queer platonic has been used to describe feelings and relationships of either or both a non-romantic or ambiguously romantic nature, in order to express that they break one or more social norms for relationships. Now, this is important to aromantic people because a lot of people assume that romantic relationships are the end-all be-all, that once you find a partner to marry, you will be, like, happy and fulfilled in your life and all that jazz. And people sometimes assume that asexual people and even aromantic people just don't want relationships, especially aromantic people, because a lot of people assume that aromantic people, or people who do not feel romantic love for other people, don't want or desire a romantic relationship, and it's really frustrating sometimes because I live in America, and at least for American society, there's a lot of social norms around relationships, specifically romantic relationships, and they say that romantic relationships are more important than friendships, or more life-defining than friendships. You will move in with your romantic partner, you will move away from family to be with your romantic partner, and you will start a family and coordinate your lives together, and you will be a romantic pair or polycule or group if you're not monogamous. Like, you will define your life around your romantic relationship, and that's fine. That is entirely understandable and valid, that you dictate importance through your romantic relationship. The problem becomes when social norms dictate that those relationships are the most important above any other relationship, which unfortunately leaves some aromantic and asexual people out of the equation. Now, asexual people are still capable of having romantic relationships. So if they find a romantic relationship that just does not involve sex, they can also fall into this situation, which I have seen before. I've seen asexual people find a romantic partner who loves them and is intimate with them and adores them, but they still fall under this concept of their romantic relationship, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their date mate, their partner, whatever you want to call it, is the most important person in their life, and that relationship dwarfs all other relationship. It is their most important relationship. I have had a friend of mine say, well, of course I'm going to value my boyfriend over my best friend. And that kind of sucks. Because when you put importance on someone over another person because of your relationship, while obviously I can't tell you not to do that because you're going to manage your relationships as much as you want, it's your relationships, not anyone else's. As a person who is aromantic, and I do not feel romantic feelings towards people, I do not have a romantic drive towards people, and relationships like those, I have to live in a society where I am told that because I am not in a romantic relationship, I will never be someone's first priority in their life. And that really, really sucks. It is heartbreaking. And just because I don't feel romantic love does not mean I do not have value. And a queer platonic relationship is not necessarily a solution to that, but it is an equivalent for aromantic people and the aromantic community. And even people who aren't aromantic, who just want to have an important relationship that is not romantic. A lot of people are like, oh, so a best friend. Like, you have someone who is super important to you, who is not romantic, but like you go out together, you hang out a lot, you have a lot of interests that you share, you spend your life together. That's a friend. That's your best friend. And no, that's not a best friend. Because people will still value their romantic relationships above their best friends. A lot of people marry their best friends, and that's great. But I'm not going to marry my best friend. A lot of people who will consider me a best friend, I'm not going to be in a relationship with. I don't want people to consider me to have a very important best friend, because they will most of the time still assume that if I get a romantic partner, I will value them over a queer platonic relationship I have. It's not a best friend. I have a friend of mine who has been in a queer platonic relationship before, and the important distinction that they have between a queer platonic relationship and a best friend is, for them, like, it is the same rush of dopamine you get from having a romantic partner. It is intense love. It is wanting to be around them as much as possible for them. And there was a honeymoon phase, or rather, they say it was like how people describe a honeymoon phase, where couples are lovey-dovey, mushy-mushy. It was like that, but it didn't go away, and it was just platonic happiness. They didn't want to kiss them, or marry them, or raise a family with them, or have a kid with them, but it was an important relationship, and when they couldn't hang out together with their partner, it was difficult. It hurt. It was sad, and yeah, they feel like it's a bummer if they can't talk to their best friend, but it wasn't the same intensity. it it wasn't the same sort of like feeling. And mind you, queer platonic relationships, as I said before, is any relationship that can break a like societal social norm for standard like romantic relationships. So that is just one example of a queer platonic relationship, but the point being that it's a very significant relationship that is more than just a best friend, and it is important because people want to have value in themselves and value with companions and don't want people to overlook them because it's not a romantic relationship or they don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Why are you like like why do you care so much about this person who isn't your boyfriend or girlfriend or date mate? Well, because they're not just a best friend. Now, mind you, I've been talking a lot about aromantic people and how this is important to them, but I want to clarify that a queer platonic relationship is not distinctly exclusive to the aromantic community. You can be any sort of combination of people and have a queer platonic relationship. You don't even have to be queer. You can be straight and have a queer platonic relationship. Like it does not matter. The queerness is not inherent in terms of like being aromantic or asexual or anything like that, or not feeling things. The queerness is in like gender queer or queer umbrella, in that it is different than the norm. It is breaking the social norms or standards of a romantic relationship. And people might argue with me and be like, oh, straight people can't have a queer platonic relationship, aromantic people can't have a queer platonic relationship, blah, 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 blah. And you're fine to believe that. I personally don't care, but this next section is not going to be for you if you believe that. But in general, I can't speak for all aromantic people and all people with queer platonic relationships, but as someone who's been in a queer platonic relationship, I firmly believe that you don't have to be aromantic or asexual to, or even have to be queer to be in a queer platonic relationship. The importance is being in a relationship that defies social norms, at least around romantic relationships. And I want to say that because Esme and Yver on the screen, I said I was going to come back to this. They are my favorite queer platonic OC couple. And like they are in a lifelong relationship and they very much love each other. They actually live together and they spend most of their lives together. Even after they retire, they still, when they have to move, they move in together after they stop working together. And they are not in a romantic relationship. Neither of them is aromantic. Esme is demisexual and panromantic, and Yver is, I believe, pan both ways. But Yver is not my character, so I cannot confirm or deny that specificity. But they care about each other quite a bit, and they share their life, and they don't have kids of their own. Well, Yver does, but Esme does not. Does not raise that child. But they have a sort of pseudo child in the form of their friend Manuel, who they met when he was like 14ish, and sort of became parental figures to him. But yeah, they are in a lifelong partnership and relationship, and it doesn't mean Yver doesn't have sex with other people, because he has other romantic and sexual relationships. Esme hasn't found anyone as of yet, but Esme is open to it. They live together and they spend their lives together, and they are important to each other, and they just aren't a romantic couple. They don't like do any, like, kissing on the lips or anything like that. There is some hand holding, as you can see in the picture, and there's a lot of, like, space sharing. There's a lot of cuddles involved, but they're not in a sexual relationship, and they don't consider themselves romantic partners. They would not consider each other a boyfriend or anything, because that's just, like, not how they consider their relationship. Some people might consider their relationship romantic. They just, like, personally don't see it that way, and that is relatively important to a queer platonic relationship, because everyone's definitions are going to be different. My queer platonic relationship is gonna be different than my friend's queer platonic relationship. Like, I had a queer platonic relationship before. I don't currently, but I did have one before with the creator of Iver, Cake, and it was really, really nice. We basically saw each other as life partners and, like, more than just best friends. We weren't going to date or have sex, and we weren't super, like, kissy or cuddly, but, like, if given the choice, I would, like, legally marry Cake. We, like, had plans to move in together at one point that didn't end up working out, but, like, we had ideas of how our life was going to be, and we wanted to be in each other's lives. Now, I did say that this was a past relationship. We are still on good terms, because stuff occurred that I'm not going to get into, because that is a thing between us. But we are not currently in that relationship, and the only thing that I will get into that I think is important is that a queer platonic relationship is important as well, because there's still things that need to be communicated. Needs in relationships need to be communicated, and there was something in that relationship that wasn't being met, and we had to talk about it, and we had to go, okay, you know what, this isn't going to work out for right now, but we're still friends. We still talk a lot, and I still care about him quite a bit. And it's, like, it's almost a shame that people would want to reduce what we had to just a best friendship, because I have best friends. I have people who I care about quite a bit platonically, but I wouldn't move in with them. I wouldn't share my life to them or bare my entire soul to them. They're great and all, it's just not really what I want from them. It's not something that I would feel comfortable with just my best friends. Like, I might live with my best friends. I have lived with a best friend before and shared a house, but sharing bills and money and food and essential living things with some of my best friends, with, like, my best friends, I don't think I could do that. I don't feel enough, not necessarily trust, but, like, intimacy with those people. And maybe you do feel that way with your friends, and you're just like, well, that's not a queer platonic relation, because I would marry my best friend, I would live with my best friend, I would help my best friend raise children. Great. That's great for you, and you don't define your relationships like that. But we as a society don't have as much of a language for friendships as we should. There's a different understanding of what friendship involves between each people. And for some people, friendship, being best friends, does not involve raising kids together, and that shared responsibility and that trust in being reliable. And so for some people, that is regulated to specifically a very intimate relationship, and that type of intimate relationship is the type of romantic relationship that most people have. But for people who don't want or don't have those romantic relationships, that doesn't mean they don't want a relationship that's just as filled with intimacy and trust. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense for people. Long story short, a queer platonic relationship is not just a best friend, but it is a best friend on the level of a romantic relationship that is not overshadowed by a romantic relationship. And that's a real gritty definition of that, and I don't like it in entirety because I feel like it misses a lot of nuance. But no, a queer platonic relationship is not just a best friend. It is a word specifically originally from the aromantic community to define important and significant relationships to people who do not feel romantic love towards people, or rarely feel romantic love to people. People on the aromantic spectrum. And, you know, A-spec people should get to have vocabulary for their experiences. It's not just this or just that. It's not everyone has that. It's not being special. Like, we need words to define experiences, or else people aren't going to understand things. If we don't have a word to describe something, it's going to be a struggle to describe it. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people like the word Schadenfreude from German, because it's happiness at the misfortune of others. And a lot of people, once they hear that word, go, oh, that rings true to me. That is a word that I can understand. I like that word. It's a unique word I haven't heard before, but it describes a lot of things that I understand. Like when I laugh because someone gets hit in the face with a rake and they deserved it, or when an ice skater falls flat on their ass in front of a competition and you laugh. It's something that they understand, and so with words, it's important. You need words to define things so that people understand what's being said. And speaking of words to describe what's being said, some people might go, well, so what do you call people in a queer platonic relationship? What do they call each other? Like, they aren't boyfriends, girlfriends, or date mates, so what are they? And that depends on the people. So, I was in a queer platonic relationship with Cake, and we would sometimes call ourselves partners for ease of discussion with people who weren't familiar with the term, because people understood partners as something intimate and important. It was the best way we had to describe the intensity of our relationship to other people who didn't understand. And that tended to work. And I think a lot of people use partners. Queer platonic partners works as well. I've seen that a lot. QPPs as a very shortened phrase. Yvette and Esme, while being fictional, have a variation of it that they use because as characters / people, they came up with something that they felt comfortable with. They don't call each other queer platonic partners. Esme is Yver's Esme, and Yver is Esme's Yver, so they will refer to each other as my Esme or my Yver. And people just sort of understand that as, like, important. It's a stance of, like, how they would say my boyfriend or my girlfriend. They say it in that same tone, but they don't say boyfriend or girlfriend because that's not the type of relationship they have. They just replace it with a name. Cake and I generally use the term zucchini, and zucchini is a word used in the aro and ace community that was originally like a joke talking about the lack of meaning of words for people who weren't in these socially normative relationships that ahead. Again, it goes back to the whole you need words and definitions to describe experiences. So, they were talking about like how words don't really mean things anymore, and I don't remember exactly how it came up, but someone made a joke about how they could call someone in life a zucchini, and because it has meaning to them in a specific way and it meant a certain thing, that's what the word meant. And so that stuck with queer platonic partners, and it's an uncommon term, but it was one that when I first got into my first queer platonic relationship was a pretty well-known one. So Cake and I were zucchinis, as in he was my zucchini, I was his zucchini, and we liked it because, Cake had Cake as a name, and therefore we could pun with it, and I am very fond of puns, so I always made jokes about how if we were to move in together, we could make zucchini cake, or rather, I could make zucchini cake with my zucchini cake. But I believe that one's a little bit dated and out of standard use, but I like it. I want to bring it back. I know some people who refer to their queer platonic relationships as siblings or family because that's the word they prefer to use for it, and that's one that is understood by society. I don't personally do that, but if people know my sister Chen, I do have a intense relationship with my sister where it is a incredibly important relationship that I value quite a bit, and a lot of people would say that I put it on a value of a romantic relationship. So in that aspect, it would technically fall under the queer platonic umbrella. Not specifically a queer platonic relationship because we don't consider it that, but it would fall under that umbrella. So there's a lot of ways to use that or call people one thing or another, and it's really up to the person or people in the relationship. But yeah, it's really all about what makes people comfortable. But speaking of what makes people comfortable, a big thing that I wanted to talk about, and I was specifically asked to talk about, is the fact that queer platonic relationships are not only just as important as romantic relationships with partners in terms of intensity and importance, but at the same time you need to set up boundaries as well, because since everyone does have different definitions of friendships, and because it is such an intense love, and according to my friend, it is a very literal difference in the type of love. I don't personally necessarily feel that, just because I don't know if I've ever had romantic feelings for someone, but I assume that a allo romantic who might have that would have a more solid understanding on the difference. But regardless, back to the point. Because it is so intense, and because people do have different understandings of what friendship is, people need to set up boundaries in a relationship that is queer platonic, just as they would in a romantic relationship, just as they would in a sexual relationship. Because things can get overly codependent in a platonic relationship because of different understandings of what friendship is about and how people understand it, it's very distinct, and it can be difficult because of that difficulty in telling the difference between a friendship and other queer platonic stuff, and because of how we see platonic love in society. But it can get easily codependent, and you get that rush of dopamine when you're talking to this person, and you want them to be in your life, and you want to give them happiness and get happiness from them, instead of leaning into other relationships, and that can cause some issues, because when you don't have boundaries or a understanding of what they are, or even the same understanding of relationships and what to expect from a queer platonic relationship, or specifically from your partner, it can get really difficult. You might not see eye to eye. There might be something that you need from your queer platonic partner that they don't really understand as being part of the equation. Something that my queer platonic partners had to understand at some point in our relationship. And I'm going to count my sister in this case, because in this case I think people would consider this as an important relationship, is that I need to feel valued, and I refuse to be devalued by their romantic relationships. Not that I don't think they should have them, or not that I don't want them to have them, or anything like that, because my sister has multiple date mates. But I am not less important, is the important thing. And I made that boundary, and it was something that all of my significant queer platonic partners in the past have, my singular queer platonic partner in the past and my sister both understand. That is a boundary for me, and you need to make sure that you are stating those boundaries with your partners in queer platonic relationships just as you would in a romantic or a sexual relationship. Because you can overstep boundaries. I've had someone who I thought understood my boundaries and understood that I would not be sidelined. I was just as important. But they didn't treat me like I was just as important. They sidelined me for their romantic relationship because their romantic relationship to them was more important than their relationship to me. And it was hell. It hurt so much, and I had to cut that relationship off because it wasn't going to last. I cannot be in that relationship, and I had to set that boundary. It sucks. But it's a thing that is, like, something that I specifically asked to talk about, and I can understand why. Because these sorts of relationships are already devalued by people who think, oh, this is just a best friend, right? And no. It's important, and you need to treat it as if it is important. I mean, because it is. And speaking of the importance of value, I did want to say that it is possible to cheat on someone in a queer platonic relationship. Again, because of that difference in our understanding of friendship and what it entails and what a platonic relationship is, if those boundaries are not defined clearly, then it is something that needs to be talked about, and lines need to be clearly drawn. Not necessarily to, punish anyone, but people need to be on the same page of understanding. And I have seen, it's not even just like, oh, you get another queer platonic partner and that's cheating on your queer platonic partner. Like, a queer platonic relationship, just like any other relationship, can involve two people. It can involve multiple people. If you're poly, it can be open or it can be closed. And if you do have a closed queer platonic relationship, getting another partner is, without asking, is going to be a violation of that. But also, you need to make sure that just as if you were in a romantic relationship and you started seeing someone sexually for a completely non-romantic, sexual-only relationship, that is something that you would tell your romantic partner about. It is part of intimacy, it is part of trust, it is part of relationships. Otherwise, it may be considered cheating unless that is something that you discussed ahead of time. And just as in a romantic relationship, if you are in a partnership with someone and you find another partner, whether it be sexual, romantic, or another queer platonic partner, you need to communicate that, and you need to, like, you don't, not even like when that happens, you should have talked about it beforehand. Talked about, hey, I want to see if we can open up this relationship, or hey, I'm a poly person, or hey, this is just a romantic relationship. I want to make sure that I want to have a talk about opening up my relationship to, or our relationship, so I can have a queer platonic partner. I'd like to go searching for that. You need to have that conversation. You need to talk about it. It is a thing that is important, because I have seen situations where someone has been in a romantic relationship and has gotten a queer platonic partner and didn't tell anyone, and people were upset because it was a violation of trust and intimacy. It is possible. It is important to talk about that and have those conversations. These are important conversations. And again, this is what another thing that makes it different than a friendship. You can have a million friends. You can have more than one best friend. Some people might argue with me on that, but you can have more than one best friend. You need to talk about queer platonic relationships beforehand, before you get more than one partner, and just make sure that's something that you and your partner have talked about. Okay, that was a little bit heavy at the end, but if you made it through this entire video, I am glad that you have joined me for this. I hope you found this video informative. It was a lot longer than my normal videos. It is going over a half an hour now. Oof! I don't usually make videos this long, but I had a lot to say, I guess. Quick recap. Queer platonic relationships are important because they are basically life partners that are not romantic. They are just as valid as any other relationship, and they are called queer platonic because and should not be devalued because they were originally coined by the aromantic community, who need words to help describe their experiences, and should not be devalued because you just think it's just a friendship but best friends. There's a variety of things to call queer platonic partners. It's all based on them. And yes, you need to set boundaries and make sure you have conversations about relationships. That's very important, because it's just as important as any other relationship, whether it be romantic or sexual. But yeah, I hope you guys had fun. I hope you learned a lot. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comments. Maybe if I have enough questions, I will be able to do a second video on queer platonic relationships. The only question I will veto is, isn't that just a best friend? Or anything that's like just being a jerkface about it. Please ask questions in like honest, good faith questions. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. I'll see you guys next time. I will send you to the outro. Bye! Well, that's the end of this video. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section, or contact me on any of my social media, which is linked in the description below. I also have my Patreon there if you guys want to throw a monthly donation at me. Thanks so much for your support. I'll see you next time. Bye!